Somewhere between the jagged canyon ridges and the endless scrubland, where the wind carries dust instead of rain, a man named Corbin Thorne found something he wasn't looking for. And in the unforgiving math of the frontier, finding the wrong thing usually cost a man his life. He walked toward his well that afternoon, heat shimmering off the hard-packed earth, and saw her, collapsed against the wooden fence. A young woman, taller than any he'd seen, her dark hair matted with dirt. She wore the deerskin and beadwork of the Apache. Her lips were cracked white from dehydration. In this territory, helping an Apache was considered treason by the settlers and a death sentence by the military. But Corbin didn't see politics. He saw a human being dying of thirst. When he offered the ladle of water, she looked at him with eyes that held more suspicion than gratitude. But she drank. 3 times she drank. When she was done, she stood, towering, silent, and stared at him as if memorizing the lines of his face. Then she turned and walked into the hills without a single word. Corbin watched her disappear, thinking that would be the end of it. He told himself it was just a random encounter in a lonely land. He was wrong. That evening the air changed. The horses in the corral were restless, their hooves scraping dirt. The bay gelding let out a sharp whinny that cut through the dark. Corbin sat up in his cot, listening. Nothing followed but the wind. He lay back down, telling himself tomorrow would be just another day of labor. He was still telling himself that when the sun rose, he stepped outside at first light, coffee in hand, and looked out at the valley. And his blood ran cold. They were everywhere. At first, he thought it was a trick of the light, shadows on the ridgeline. But shadows don't hold rifles. Shadows don't sit on horseback in perfect, terrifying stillness. He counted 10, then 20. Then he stopped counting. They lined the ridge to the north, the hillside to the east, the slope to the west. 300 Apache warriors. They weren't advancing. They weren't screaming war cries. They were simply there, surrounding his ranch like a noose pulled tight. Corbin's hand twitched toward the rifle leaning by the door, but he stopped. What good is one rifle against an army? This wasn't a raid.
Hold on.
Raiders strike fast and vanish. This was a siege. This was a message. The question was, had he saved his life yesterday or signed his death warrant? A single rider broke from the group on the northern ridge. He descended the rocky slope with a slow, deliberate calm. Corbin stood in the middle of his yard, frozen, watching the figure approach. The rider stopped 50 feet away. An older man, his face a map of deep lines and hard years. He wore no war paint, but authority radiated from him like heat from a furnace. This was a chief. The silence stretched out, thick enough to choke on. Then the old warrior raised one hand, not in greeting, not in threat. He just held it there, waiting. Corbin forced himself to breathe. If they wanted him dead, he would be full of arrows by now. They were waiting for something. He stepped forward, matching the distance. 10 paces. They stood facing each other. The warrior's eyes were black and unreadable. He made a gesture, pouring water, drinking. Corbin's stomach dropped. The girl. He nodded slowly. Yes. The warrior turned his head and called out a sharp command. Movement rippled through the lines of warriors on the ridge. They parted, creating a gap. And through that gap, she appeared. The girl from yesterday. But she looked different now. Clean deerskin, turquoise around her neck, riding a painted horse. Even from a distance, her height was striking. She was a giant among her people. She rode straight to him, stopping 10 feet away. Her English was halting but clear. You give water. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. You were hurt, Corbin said. Needed help. She turned to the chief, spoke rapidly in Apache, then turned back to Corbin. My father say you brave or fool. I didn't know who you were. Corbin admitted. That is why you live, she replied coldly. Man who know, he try to get reward. You give water because thirsty person need water. That is difference.
Push it hard.
She explained the test.
It won't budge.
Her father had sent her to walk alone for 3 days to prove her strength. She had fallen, lost her path. Corbin's water had saved her. My fathers say we watch, she said. See if you speak truth or lie. See if you tell other white men where we are. How long? Corbin asked. She didn't answer. She turned her horse and rode back up the slope. The chief followed, and the siege began. For 6 days, Corbin lived in a fishbowl. The warriors remained on the ridges, statues carved from stone. He worked his land under 300 pairs of eyes. He fixed fences. He fed horses. He drew water from the same well where he'd met the girl. Every movement was analyzed. Every glance toward the horizon was judged. Was he going to run? Was he going to signal for help? Sleep came in fragments. The psychological weight was crushing. He was a prisoner on his own property, guarded by an army that never slept. On the 4th morning, a bundle appeared by his door. Dried meat and a clay jar. They were feeding him, keeping their specimen alive. On the 6th day, the girl returned, alone. She rode into the yard and dismounted. Up close, she was imposing, nearly as tall as Corbin himself. You still here, she said. Didn't have much choice. You could run, she challenged. At night, take horse. And get killed before I made it a mile? No thanks. You smart, she said. It sounded almost like a compliment. She walked to the well and looked down. Deep water, good water. That's why I bought the land. She spun on him. My people need water too. This land used to be ours. Now white men build fences, dig wells, take what was free. I don't want trouble, Corbin said carefully. Trouble is already here, she replied. Question is, what you do with it? Before he could answer, a sound shattered the morning. A gunshot. Distant, rolling off the canyon walls. Then another. The girl's head snapped toward the east. On the ridges, the statues moved. Warriors mounted up, rifles unslung. White men coming, she said, her voice hard. Many guns. Corbin's blood went cold. Militia? They hunt, she said, looking at him with a new intensity. They hunt us. If they find you with us, they kill you too. They think you enemy. Where are you going? If you wise, she said, vaulting onto her horse, you choose words carefully. She kicked her horse into a gallop, riding hard for the ridge. Within moments, the 300 warriors melted into the landscape, disappearing into the rocks and scrub as if they had never been there. Corbin stood alone in the silence, but it wasn't silent for long. The thunder of hooves approached, angry, chaotic. He had 5 minutes. 5 minutes to decide his fate. When those men arrived, they would find him standing in a valley that had just harbored a war party. If he lied and they found tracks, he was dead. If he told the truth, they might shoot him as a collaborator. They came tearing down the trail like a storm. 15 riders, dust-coated, sweat-stained, eyes wide with the adrenaline of the hunt. They wore the rough clothes of settlers but carried the weapons of soldiers. The leader, a broad man with a thick beard, pulled his heaving horse to a stop yards from Corbin. You alone here? The bearded man shouted, his hand already resting near his revolver. Just me, Corbin said, keeping his hands where they could be seen. You see any Apache? A younger rider pushed forward, rifle resting across his saddle. We've been tracking a war party. Trail led straight to this valley. Corbin's mind raced. I saw signs, but they're gone. Gone where? North, I think. Heard horses moving out about 20 minutes ago. It was a guess, but a necessary one. The young rider spat. You got a lot of nerve living out here alone. Or maybe you got friends you shouldn't have. It's my land, Corbin said, steadying his voice. Bought and paid for. Apache don't care about deeds, the bearded man growled, dismounting. We're a volunteer militia, hunting a group that raided a settlement south of here. Burned 3 homesteads, killed a family. We aim to make them pay. He walked past Corbin, pushing into the cabin. Check the perimeter, he barked to his men. Water the horses. The militiamen spread out. They were edgy, fingers hovering on triggers. They checked the ground, looking for prints. Corbin stood by the door as the bearded man rummaged through his supplies. You got coffee? Some. We'll take it. He turned, staring Corbin down. You sure you didn't see them? A war party doesn't just vanish. Found fresh tracks, a voice shouted from the yard. Lots of them. They were camped here. The bearded man's eyes narrowed. He drew his revolver. You lied? He marched Corbin outside. The men were gathered by the fence, pointing at the churned earth. They were here for days, the tracker said. Hundreds of them. The young rider leveled his rifle at Corbin's chest. You're a traitor. You let them camp here. Why didn't they kill you? Corbin knew this was the moment. He could beg, or he could stand tall. Because I didn't give them a reason to, Corbin said. They had 300 warriors on those ridges. If they wanted me dead, I'd be dead. They let me be. So I let them be. 300? The bearded man faltered. You're saying 300 Apache were surrounding this ranch for 6 days? Corbin nodded. And not one of them fired a shot. The militiamen exchanged looks. The math changed instantly. 15 rifles against 300 warriors wasn't a battle. It was a massacre. Why were they here? The leader asked, his voice lower now. I gave water to a girl, Corbin said. One of theirs. She was dying. I helped her. They came to see what kind of man I was. You helped a squaw? The young rider sneered, finger tightening on the trigger. I helped a thirsty person, Corbin shot back. Same as I'd help you. And they rewarded you by surrounding your house? They were watching, making sure I didn't run to town and bring back an army. Corbin gestured to the militiamen. Looks like they were right to worry. We should hang him, the young rider muttered. Traitor. We got families dead, the bearded man yelled. You expect us to just let them go? I expect you to stay alive, Corbin said. The ones who were here didn't raid anyone. They were testing me. Testing you for what? Before Corbin could answer, a sound pierced the air. A high, oscillating call. Not a coyote, not a bird, a signal. Every man froze. The call came again, echoing from the north ridge, then answered from the south, then the west, the valley bowl filled with the sound of invisible enemies. They're still here, the tracker whispered, his face draining of color. The bearded man scanned the ridges. Nothing but rock and shadow. But the presence was heavy, suffocating. The noose was tightening again. Mount up, the leader roared. We're leaving, now! We came to fight, the young rider protested, though his hands shook. We came to fight raiders, not an army on the high ground. The bearded man swung onto his horse. Move! Panic took over. The discipline of the militia crumbled. They scrambled into their saddles, horses rearing. The bearded man looked down at Corbin one last time. You're a fool if you stay here, Thorn. Next time we won't be so polite. Get out. They rode south, whipping their horses, running from the ghosts in the hills. The thunder of their retreat faded, leaving Corbin in the silence of the dust. Then movement on the ridge. The girl, Nijoni, rode down first. Behind her, the chief. Behind him, a dozen warriors. They descended slowly, calm as a river. When they reached the yard, Nijoni dismounted. She walked to Corbin, her face unreadable. You not tell them, she said. You could have. Could have sent them into trap, or sent them to kill. I don't want anyone killed, Corbin said. She turned to her father. The old chief looked at Corbin with a gaze that stripped him down to his soul. He spoke a few sharp words. My father say test is over, Nijoni translated. You pass. What happens now? Now, she said, we talk. They sat in his small cabin. The chief, the giant girl, and the rancher. You give water when I fall, Nijoni said. You not ask payment. This not normal for white men. They take, but you give. The chief reached into a leather pouch and pulled out an object wrapped in cloth. He placed it on the table. A necklace. Intricate blue and white beadwork on soft leather. This is mark of protection, Nijoni explained. You wear this. My people know you are friend. They will not harm you. They will watch over your land. Corbin stared at the beads. It was a beautiful thing. A dangerous thing. But there is cost, she warned. Those white men, they will come back. They want revenge. If they see you wear this, they will think you are traitor. They will want to hurt you too. The chief spoke, his voice low and final. Choose carefully, Nijoni translated. Protection from us mean danger from them. You cannot have both. Corbin held the necklace. It was a line drawn in the sand. If he put it on, he was turning his back on his own society. He would be an outcast, a target. But he thought of the militia, their anger, their fear, their desire for blood. Were those really his people? Or was his tribe the people who respected the simple act of giving water to the thirsty? Corbin lifted the necklace and placed it over his head. The beads settled against his chest. I choose to live with honor, he said. The chief stood. He placed a heavy hand on Corbin's shoulder. A bridge between worlds. My father say you brave or stupid, Nijoni said, a ghost of a smile on her lips. He also say, stupid, brave men sometimes become legends. She moved to the door. We go north now to summer grounds. Will you come back? Maybe, she said, if we need water, to remind ourselves that not all white men are same. They rode out. The valley emptied. Corbin was alone, but the air felt different. He was protected, and he was marked. 3 weeks passed in uneasy quiet. Corbin worked his land, the necklace always visible on his chest. He knew the reckoning was coming. It arrived on a Tuesday morning. Dust on the southern trail. 8 riders. The bearded leader was back, and this time he wasn't looking for water. He was looking for justice. They formed a half circle around the yard, rifles raised. We heard rumors, the bearded man shouted. Heard a rancher out here turned traitor. His eyes locked onto the blue and white beads on Corbin's chest. Guess the rumors were true. You're wearing their colors. Corbin stood his ground. I'm wearing a guarantee that I wake up in the morning. It makes you one of them, the young rider yelled. It makes me alive, Corbin replied calmly. We gave you a chance, the leader said, dismounting. Now you got to explain why we shouldn't burn this place down with you in it. I gave water to a dying girl, Corbin said, his voice carrying across the yard. Her father is a chief. They tested me. I passed. They offered peace. I took it. That's the story. You think that makes you special? The man stepped closer, towering over Corbin. No, Corbin said. I think it makes me smart. You came here hunting Apache 3 weeks ago. How many did you kill? Silence stretched out. That's what I thought, Corbin continued. You found an army and you ran. I made a different choice. I chose not to fight at all. Coward's choice, the young rider spat. Maybe, Corbin said, but my ranch is standing, and I sleep at night knowing I didn't start a war. You can't stay neutral, the leader growled. I'm not neutral, Corbin said. I picked the side that doesn't want bloodshed. If that makes me your enemy, then shoot me now. He spread his arms wide, an open target. The sun caught the beads of the necklace, shining like a beacon. No one moved. A hawk screeched overhead. The militiamen looked at each other, then at their leader, shooting an unarmed man who was just standing his ground. That wasn't soldiering. That was murder. Finally, the bearded man shook his head and spat in the dust. "You're a damn fool, Thorn, but you're an honest one." He turned to his men. "Mount up. We're wasting time." "We're letting him go?" "He ain't hurting anyone," the leader said. "Let the Apache have him." He looked at Corbin one last time. "Don't expect us to come running if you need help. You made your choice. Live with it." "I intend to," Corbin said. They rode out, slower this time, defeated not by bullets, but by conviction. Corbin stood in the silence of his valley. He walked to the well and drew a bucket of clear, cold water. He poured it into the trough. High on the ridge, a silhouette appeared against the setting sun. Nijoni. She had been watching, making sure he survived the choice he had made. She raised one hand. Corbin raised his, and then she was gone. Corbin touched the necklace. It had cost him the trust of his own kind, but it had bought him peace in a land where peace was the rarest currency of all. His ranch would stand. The water would flow. And when thirsty travelers came through, Apache or white, friend or enemy, he would offer them a drink. Because in a territory torn by fear, honor was the only thing worth fighting for. What would you have done in Corbin's boots? Would you have taken the necklace and risked everything, or sided with the militia? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of the frontier, hit that like button. It really helps us out. And don't forget to subscribe for more tales where history and legend collide.